well, Uncle Dan.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Oh man, I you know what I need? I need a vacation. I need like 40 days
to get
and
out of here?
40 nights of just sweet R&R.
Right on.
But let me tell you something.
It's America, and we don't take vacations.
Well, there's that, and also, I feel like a bunch of shit needs to happen. I got to get some ducks in a row before.
All right.
Some eggs in a basket.
Yeah, sure.
Before I can take a big vacation.
Yeah.
I'm alluding very slyly, as the listeners no doubt have picked up on, to the Exodus. I wanted to talk about Moses and the Israelites and all of that business.
Oh boy, we're doing this.
But I think it's going to be a two-parter.
Yeah, it's a lot of content, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is in celebration of Rosh Hashanah, which has nothing to do with Passover, which would be the correct. But it's the time of, I don't know, there's a Jewish holiday that's happening.
There's a Jewish holiday always happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So we're celebrating that by shredding a bunch of ancient Jews.
Right on.
So, as most of our listeners will know, the setup is basically this. Most of the Israelites are currently slaves in Egypt.
Right.
Historians and archaeologists will point out, no, they weren't.
An incredible historical event that never happened.
That never actually occurred. There's no reason to believe. I mean, the Egyptians were amazing record keepers.
It's kind of their thing.
And they didn't. There's just no evidence that they ever enslaved a whole tribe or race of people.
They wrote on everything.
Yeah.
Right?
And they never said, by the way, this Egyptian guy just bought 4,000 Israelites from that Egyptian guy or whatever. Like this just never happened.
The economic slam that would happen to the Egyptian economy.
Right. But we're going to ignore what actually happened in the real world. And we're going to talk about what happened in the Bible.
That's actually the subheading of the Bible. Ignore what happens in the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
Read the Bible.
So let's dip in. So all this kerfuffle really launches from a fever dream of a doofus that a doofus had in the desert. This particular doofus was not raised as a shepherd or a goat herd or whatever, but he had gotten married. And like so many doofuses of this world, his father-in-law had given him a job he wasn't qualified for, in this case, tending flocks. So there's Moses out tending his flocks, and like an idiot, he had taken them to, quote, the far side of the wilderness, or, depending on your translation, the backside of the desert.
Okay.
The ass end of Shitsville is where, as I think the translation in the new international fuck version of it. Anyway, I'll let you decide what it means. So this is where he sees the burning bush.
Right.
Which even in the biblical account totally just sounds like a prank somebody was playing on him.
Right.
Because a voice comes out of the bush and says, Moses, wait, don't come any closer.
Right.
Just stay right there.
Stay there.
And as a matter of fact, take off your shoes. Take off your shoes. It's holy ground. Right. So you stand there with your shoes off. And what else should I make him do? I don't know. I tell him to go to the Pharaoh. Okay, go to the Pharaoh.
Prank war.
Yeah, exactly. And thus launches the grand story of Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 epic, Ben-Hur. No, just kidding. It's the Ten Commandments.
You know, when I was young and in church, especially in primary, they would, I think the wording in the Bible is it was like on fire but not consumed.
Yeah.
And this was like this was so incredible. Like, you understand, it was burning but it wasn't burning.
Right.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Cool.
Right.
My gas fireplace at home does the same thing.
Exactly.
It's a really good trick. Anyway, I guess that's not real. So actually, I said that's where Cecil B. DeMille's movie starts. No, that's not where the movie starts. Considering the fact that the movie is almost 4 hours long, it's probably where it should have started.
Right.
But no, then 12-year-old Dan would have been missed out on all that sweet footage of a gauzily clad Ann Baxter as Nefertiti. So,
ooh, yeah.
So no, let's go back a ways for the movie. But for the purposes of our argument, boring. He was not raised as a prince of Egypt. Shut the fuck up.
I know, right?
Anyway, this dopey goat herd Now the Lord has told him to go to Egypt and tell the Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery and then lead them into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Spoiler alert, that was a lie.
I know, right?
You never get to go to a land flowing with milk and honey. That's A, not a land that exists, and B, no. They don't end up there.
On the scale of lands of milk and honey,
Yeah.
the Middle East doesn't rank.
No.
Right?
No, you don't get that.
There are places like that. They're just not in the Middle East.
No, absolutely not. Side note, this land that the Israelites were going to go to that was promised to them by the Lord their God,
Yeah.
what is listed in the Bible as the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites.
Oh, no.
I'm not making that up. Not parasites, but parasites, Hivites, and, I shit you not, Jebusites.
Jebusites. Fuck.
I don't even believe in Jebus. Anywho.
And there is a list of a whole bunch of people who are going to got genocided.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
This
right.
is who you kill first.
One or two of them, it's just like, hey, Lord, these guys are on that land you promised.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, kill
I have a solution.
most of them. Keep their wives, though.
Right.
You know, whatever.
Exactly.
Anywho, Moses is worried about this plan. He does not trust that the Israelite people will believe that he saw God, or that Pharaoh will listen to him, or that basically any of the things that he's supposed to do will work. A man of great faith he is.
Yeah, exactly.
So God has a plan. Moses should go to the elders of Israel, and they'll go to Pharaoh and say, hey, we talked to God, and he says you should let us take a 3-day weekend to go into the wilderness and do some sacrifices to him. Then, and this is all part of God's plan, the Pharaoh will say no.
Okay.
Because, that's just not how slavery works.
Right.
But then God will fuck up the Egyptians with a bunch of crazy shit, and Pharaoh will let them go. And also, bonus, God will make the Egyptians suddenly super like the Israelites, and the Israelite women will be able to ask the Egyptian ladies for all of their gold and silver jewelry, and they'll totally give it to them.
Okay.
The quote from the Bible is, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. So,
All right.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
This sounds like a story a first grader made up.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, it
and
does.
then they get the gold and they leave, and the Pharaoh's like, no.
Meh.
Go.
That element of this story just gets worse.
Wow.
It just keeps compounding. But even after that great plan that the Lord has laid out,
Yeah.
Moses was still like, but what if Pharaoh doesn't believe me? So God does some cool tricks. He's all, I got nothing in my hands. Look, nothing up my sleeves, right? Now check this out. Throw your stick on the ground. And boom, it turns into a snake. And at which point Moses literally kind of screams and runs away. And then God's like, no, check it out. Pick up the snake by the tail. And ta-da, it's a stick again.
Ooh.
Great. That's a good trick.
Yeah, it's
That's a good trick.
it's-
Now,
Have you heard of David Blaine?
is God 100% sure that that's going to be enough to trick or to convince Pharaoh? No. So he's got some other tricks. And here's the trick number 2.
This is God telling Moses what tricks to do when he gets to the
convince Pharaoh
All right.
to let his people go. And it's weird that DeMille skipped this particular trick.
Yeah.
You included the snake
Pharaoh. I
trick.
remember that.
He did not include this one. The Lord says to Moses, okay, now take your hand and put it in your robe. All right, pull it out. Ta-da, you have leprosy. And his hand is all like fucking white and leprous. And then he says, now put it back in and pull it out. You're cured.
Okay. trying to wrap my head around this one.
What's troubling you, Doug?
It's
It's a great trick. It's a great fucking trick.
if I'm Moses, that doesn't make me want to do this more.
No.
Right?
No, that's like that's one of those moments when you're like, am I unpunked?
Exactly.
God,
So you're going to give me leprosy.
I mean, it's cool that you cured me and all, but I don't
Yeah.
think I'm going to do trick number 3. Whatever you ask me to do. God's like, now pull out your dick. No.
Exactly.
No, God. Bad God. Anyway, there was a third trick that was involved turning water into blood or whatever, but we We don't have to worry about
There
that.
you go. What is the connection between these two things? Like, why does a stick turning into a snake convince Pharaoh to give up slavery?
Well, okay, what we're doing is trying to convince Pharaoh that the Hebrew God is way cooler and more powerful than his own Egyptian magicians and gods.
Okay.
Turns out, not that much cooler. Those guys can do all the same tricks, or almost all the same tricks. But that's what we're going for.
All right.
My God is more powerful than your God. You have to let us go.
Okay.
Now, okay, we'll get to it. Fuck. It's so stupid. Okay. Moses eventually packs up his family and his fancy magic stick and his hand that can turn white and makes his way to Egypt.
You know, I think I might put that stick in the trunk.
You think?
I don't want to have it in the cab with me.
Yeah, exactly. All right, kids, do not throw this on the ground. I promise you will not like it. So he goes up to Yul Brynner and he says, "Let my people go." But actually, let's dispel with the whole image of Chuck Heston as Moses, please.
Yeah.
Because that big, powerful voice was a bullshit betrayal of the biblical account, because Moses literally begs God not to make him talk to Pharaoh because he was kind of dumb and, quote, slow of speech and tongue. So less Charlton Heston, more Gomer Pyle.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
that's where we need. Well, gosh, Mr. Pharaoh, I think you should let my people go, is what we're dealing with here.
Right.
The Lord gets pissed at him, but finally says, okay, fine, you can let your brother Aaron do all the talking.
That's the character of God in this story.
Oh my God, he's the worst.
Right.
He is such a... And here's a little sidebar, just to illustrate that point. When Moses and his family were on their way to Egypt, at the Lord's command, this happens. This is Exodus chapter 4. You can look it up. Verses 24 through 26. It's just right in the middle of everything.
Okay.
At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him.
What?
But Zipporah, that's his wife,
Wow.
took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me," she said. So the Lord let him alone.
Okay. So God is
I don't-
creeping towards Moses very slowly with like a knife out.
Right?
And Moses' wife is like, I got it. I got this.
Hang on.
Chop. Flick. Right? Yeah.
It's okay. I don't care how many rabbis you throw at making this make sense.
Right.
Fuck no.
Yeah.
There is no way to make sense of this.
Why was God going to kill him?
Blah, blah, blah.
He was like hiding behind the door in the inn.
He was
Right?
I mean, what kind of psycho God is like, go and do these? I have heard the cries of your people, and go and do these things, and we will save them together. And I'm gonna kill you. Fuck it. You know what? You're slow of speech, and I fucking hate you. Okay, all right. You cut off your son's dick. Fine, we'll let you go.
Oh my God.
So there's that.
Cecil B. DeMille needs to make that movie.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Cecil be demented. Get in there. Okay, so Moses and Aaron go to the Pharaoh and they say, let us go have a festival to our God. And Pharaoh says no, so everything's going according to plan. And then he punishes the Israelites, all of the Israelites, with this whole brick scheme, which is like, you can't have straw to make your brick anymore. And there's this whole thing. Suffice it to say, I don't want to get into all that, but to suffice it to say that the Israelites are suddenly royally pissed at Moses and Aaron because not only have they not delivered them from bondage, but they've just made their lives 1,000 times shittier.
I agree with them.
Yeah. So they're understandably not okay. They go back to the Lord and say, Lord, hello, what gives? And the Lord's like, okay, so first trick didn't work, but we were expecting that. So now you go back to Pharaoh and you do the snake trick. But what would totally suck is if he just let you go because of that. So I'm going to make sure he doesn't. I'm going to harden his heart so he doesn't believe you. The Lord does that.
The psychopath.
It says right there, so that I can show the wonders that I want to show, I'll make sure that the trick doesn't work.
And spoiler alert, that thing he wants to show ends up in infanticide, but we'll get there.
It ends up in all of the sides.
Right, exactly.
It's insane. So now we get to the cool stuff, the plagues.
Ah,
Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on any of them because the story is basically the same for all of them. The Lord tells Moses to do a thing, and that makes this horrible plague happen. And then Pharaoh says, please make it stop. And Moses does. And then Pharaoh's like, nah, fuck you. We're still keeping the slaves.
right. 10 times. Well, 9 times.
A whole shit ton of
Right.
times. So let's talk about what the plagues are.
Right.
Plague 1 is that the Nile and all the good water in all of Egypt is turned into blood.
Oof.
To my mind, you're kind of blowing your wad right up front there, God.
Exactly.
You save that one for the end.
Yeah.
Because all the fish die and nobody has anything to drink.
That's the finale right there.
That's the finale.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is you're killing everybody for a week. And this is stuff like the stuff that they've got saved in their vessels turns to blood.
So no one has anything to drink for a week.
But lest you think that this impresses Pharaoh, Pharaoh then has his magicians do the same trick.
Really?
So apparently there was some water left. And he's like, well, my magicians can ruin water too. Okay. Well, great, I guess. You still don't have any water, idiot, but whatever.
The one jug of water you had.
Right. On to the next plague, I guess. So frogs,
Yeah.
teeming with frogs, then gnats, which, they're annoying, but, whatever. Then flies,
Right.
all equally annoying, but not enough to convince Pharaoh. So then the Lord kills all the Egyptian livestock.
Jesus Christ.
All of it. That's horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, goats, all dead.
Okay.
And leaves all of the Israelite livestock alive.
Okay.
That's a hell of a trick.
And yeah, Pharaoh just leaves the livestock with the Israelis, doesn't take the slave livestock.
One assumes,
Yeah.
but also one assumes by now, genocide level of people have died.
Yeah, and pestilence. Can you imagine?
How can anyone have survived a week without water
Right.
and now all of their livestock is dead?
Leaving aside the fact that none of this actually happened, none of this, like, if it had, this would be recorded.
Yeah.
We would know about
Oh, yeah.
this.
Oh,
Right. These are
somebody in Egypt might have written something down.
exactly.
Anywho, we're not done yet. Pharaoh, still not impressed. Then Moses gave all the Egyptians festering boils. Still not enough.
Jesus.
So the Lord says to the Pharaoh through Moses that he could totally have killed everybody by now, but he didn't. So, feel lucky.
Right.
But now he's going to bring a hailstorm bigger than any hailstorm that has ever hit Egypt ever. So, and you might see an issue with this. We'll see if you're clever enough to catch on to the issue that I caught on to with this.
All right.
Bring in all your livestock from the fields and shelter them.
The carcasses?
Right?
Right.
You just killed them 2 plagues ago.
Right. Exactly.
Where the fuck did all this what is the timeline here?
Right.
Was this plague 12 years later?
Right.
I don't get how this worked. The book was just not paying attention to its own damn self.
Right.
But there you go. So they
Okay.
bring in all the livestock, or some of them bring in the livestock, some of them don't. The hail happens, is whatever, kills all the crops and strips all the trees.
God.
So now we have livestock that apparently is all dead and also reincarnated. But, no one has food or water.
Yeah.
How?
There's nothing to drink. There's nothing to eat. The animals are dead and festering. Everyone's got disease. Okay.
Still,
Right.
Pharaoh's like, no,
I don't know.
I mean, these are pretty good tricks. And by now, his magicians have failed out. They cannot recreate any of this shit.
Okay.
So good on him then. But so Pharaoh says, hey, please make it stop. I'll let you all go. And then Moses makes it stop. And then he's still like, psych, nope, you're all still slaves.
Number 9.
This is a great trick. No. We're on to back to bugs for a second.
Okay.
Because we needed locusts to come into the. And then a few days of darkness.
Okay.
And then the big finale. But for that and so much more, you'll have to tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of
Dun dun dun.
This Story Sucks. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, I can't wait. But let's move on.
Let's do it.